Hi, sixth graders. So today we're going to look at a different topic than we've been working on. So for the past week, we've been working on vocabulary, and you've looked at vocabulary of equations and expressions and what all their parts are. And so today our topic is modeling one-step equations. Modeling one-step equations. And so we're just extending our topic of equations. We've talked about equations all week, and so this is still within our equations unit. And let's think for a second what it means to be an equation. Remember, it means we have an equal sign. And if you stop and think for a second, what does it mean for two things to be equal? It means that what's on the right side of the equal sign is the same as what's on the left side, right? So one way we're going to think about this, and again, the word modeling really means that we're going to represent this with pictures. So if we think about what it's going to mean to represent an equation with a picture, we're going to draw a picture of a balance. And so if you have been in school any length of time, then you have probably seen something that looks like this. So I'm going to draw a little line, and then it's going to come down and come back up. And I'm going to draw a triangle in the middle of it. And what this is going to represent is a balance, right? You've seen balances where you put objects on this side and you put objects on this side. And if this side's heavier, then this side will go to the ground and this side will go up in the air and vice versa, right? The balance, depending on which one weighs heavier, will go to one side or the other. Now, if it's balanced, if it's perfectly balanced, then what we're going to find is that these sides are even out, right? If whatever I put on this side and this side are of the same weight, then my balance will be even. And that's what I've drawn here. I'm not the best artist, so you can just imagine that these things are even. All right, and so if we're talking about modeling a one-step equation, we're going to look at a balance because these things are equal. And so let me just sort of draw a situation for you. Now, again, my artwork is not the best. You do the best of your ability. So I'm going to draw a picture of a bag. So this is like a brown paper bag. Just imagine that that's a bag. And I'm also going to, so imagine that this paper bag is sitting on this side. Now, paper bags don't hardly weigh anything, right? They're just mostly full of air. So, I just set this paper bag down. And then I'm also going to draw 3 apples. Now, I'm just going to draw circles for apples. You can imagine that those are apples. So on this side, I have a bag, a brown paper bag, and I have 1, 2, 3 apples. Now on this side, I'm going to draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 apples on this side. So go ahead and draw 7 circles. And so my question is, if these things are balanced, then I want to be able to represent this situation as an equation to eventually figure out, well, what does that mean about the empty bag, right? And so maybe you can look at this right now and you can say, okay, if there's a bag and 3 apples and then 7 apples, how many apples have to be in this bag? You might be saying to yourself, well, I'm not so sure yet, or maybe you said an answer. But let me just say this. If we just look at this and we do not know what's in the bag, right now, algebraically, this is my X. This is what I do not know and I want to find out. And again, you might be screaming at the video right now, I know how many are in there. So just hang on a second. So what we're saying is it's unknown how many are in the bag. 3 apples balanced with 7 apples. So a way I can represent this situation is with an equation, an algebraic equation. Just like we wrote with words last video, we're going to write this with pictures. So I've got an X on this side, and I am adding 3 apples to it, right? This is X. This side represents X plus 3, and it's balanced with or equal to. So when you go to the other side, it's equal to, and on this side, it's 7. So one way I could represent this picture is with an equation, some number plus 3 equals 7. Now, what is that number? So the missing number is 4, right? And you may have been, you probably were able to see that from the picture. That if there's 3 sitting here and 3 sitting here, these things are balanced with each other, right? And so what's missing has to be these 4 extra apples. In order to get 7 apples, if there's 7 apples on this side, it has to be balanced with 7 on this side. And so we would need 4 more apples over here. All right, so what you're going to practice over the next couple of days is just taking a picture and writing this equation. Or taking an equation and drawing a picture. So we're modeling our one-step equations. All right, let's look at another situation. So let's think about the bags and the apples again. Again, I'm going to draw a balance. So I'm going to start out with my balance with my triangle in the middle. They're even, right? So that we know that they're equal. And now I'm going to draw 2 bags. So 2 bags. And on this side, I'm going to draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 apples. All right. And so here's what we know. On this particular picture, we have 2 missing values. So whatever is representing what you do, just right now, and again, you might be able to look at this and be like, I know how many's in there. Hang on. Right now, algebraically, this is what's missing. So we're going to use an X. Now, you could use B for bag or G for, I don't know, Granny Smith apple. I'm going to use X, but you could really use any variable. And so let's look at how we're going to represent this picture. Now, this one is different than the one above because how many missing things did we have here? We only had 1, so we wrote down just an X. And then we had 3 objects. Now here, how many missing things do we have? We actually have 2 missing things. And so I'm going to write down my 2 as a coefficient in front of X because this represents 2 times the missing thing. I'm not going to add anything here. I'm not going to do plus anything because I do not see any apples sitting on this side. So I'm not going to add on any objects like we did up here. Up here we had 1x plus 3. Remember the coefficient in front of the x is 1. 1x plus 3 is equal to 7. Here we have 2 x's, 2 missing objects, and that's going to be equal to 8. Now, looking at the equation, we could say 2 times what number is 8? Or we could look at the bags and say, okay, how many of these apples would need to be in each of these bags split evenly if we were to have these 2 things balanced? And so how many apples have to be in both bags? There should be 4 in each bag. Now, that's not necessarily the question that we're most concerned with. We're going to work on what's called solving equations next week, where we are going to be concerned about that missing number. But for the next couple of days, we just want to practice doing this. Writing our equations. Okay? All right, just a couple more examples. Sometimes you might see it represented, well, you could see a lot of different pictures. Sometimes you might see it represented like this. So you might see just a rectangle with an X in it, and then maybe just some squares representing 1s, representing smaller objects. They might even have 1s in them. So let's look at an example that looks like this. So I drew an X and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right. So we might see something like this, and we might be asked to write an equation to represent the situation. And so if we're going to do that, then we're going to represent, well, what in symbols would the left side represent, and what in symbols would the right side? So notice we have an x here, right? 1x. So we're just going to write down an x. Now, these objects are right next to each other, so we assume that this means addition because we have an x and then we have 5 more, right? So this is going to be x plus 5 objects, x combined with or totaled or right next to 5 objects, so x plus 5 is equal to, and then we count on this side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, we did 9 of them. And so the equation that represents this picture is going to be x plus 5. All right, now another picture that might look like that might be something that looks like this. So we might have some rectangles, and we might have some 1s on this side. And so how would we write an equation that represents this picture? Well, again, this one's different than this because here we have multiple x's, right? How many x's do we have? We have 3 of them. So we're going to write down 3x. So notice again the difference between having an x plus some objects and having 3 of the x's. We would represent those differently. Here we represent with a plus sign. Here we represent with multiplication, is equal to 6. And that is the equation that you would write for here. By the way, what would the missing number be? 3 times some number is equal to 6? Has to be 2, right? What would the missing number be over here? Some number plus 5 is equal to 9. It has to be 4. All right, so the last thing I want you to do is draw your own picture. So I'm going to draw 2 little tiny balances here. So one here and one over here. And I want you to represent on these 2 balances. On this side, I want you to represent x plus 4 equals 7. And on this one, I want you to represent 4x is equal to 12. So take a second and see if you can use the models that we've drawn above here to help you draw what would this look like if it were a picture, and what would this one look like if it were a picture. Go ahead and pause the video if you need to. Try that on your own. All right, I hope you took time to pause the video and draw it on your own. So let's look at what this would look like. So there's an X here. So we would draw, and again, you could draw, I don't know, you could draw an empty cup. You could draw an empty barrel. You could draw an empty bag. You could draw a rectangle. So I'm just going to do this with rectangles. So you should have one thing labeled X. So there's an X plus 4 objects. And it doesn't matter if you use squares or circles. I'm going to use squares. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is what is sitting on this side of the balance, is an X plus 4 objects. You could even put a 1 in there if it makes you feel better. And then on this side, we're going to end up with 7 objects. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that is what the balance or the picture model for x plus 4 equal to 7 is going to look like. Now the difference over here is going to be how many x's do we have? How many missing things do we have? Here we're going to have 4. So I'm going to draw 1, 2, 3, and 4. So here you should have 4 rectangles all labeled x's. 4 x's is equal to, on this side, we need 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, draw them best you can, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And so we have 12 objects on this side and 4 missing things. And so that is what the pictures are going to look like. So again, the assignments today and tomorrow, you are going to work on either looking at a picture and writing an equation, or you're going to look at an equation and help represent a picture. Best of luck, and email me if you have questions.